My granddaughter borrowed my heirloom watch. Then the appraiser recognized it. It's engraving. My granddaughter Ava asked to borrow William's old gold watch for a job interview. She said wearing something of her grandfather's would give her courage. I wanted to believe her, so I handed it over. 2 weeks later, an estate appraiser called and asked whether I was Rebecca Clark. He had seen a watch brought in for valuation with a message engraved inside the back. For William, every minute with you mattered. That was my handwriting. When Ava came to my house, she said the appraiser must have been mistaken. Then she saw the photograph on my phone and stopped talking. Because the watch was not lost, it had been offered for sale, and someone had used my family memory as collateral. Subscribe for more stories about protecting what cannot be replaced. And tell me, would you lend a family heirloom without a written agreement? The first thing I noticed was not that Ava looked guilty. It was that she looked tired. She stood in my entryway with both hands wrapped around the strap of her handbag, her eyes fixed on the framed photograph of William and me that hung beside the coat closet. It was taken on our 40th anniversary, in the backyard of this little Willow Creek house. William had his arm around my waist, and I was laughing at something he had whispered in my ear. Ava had always loved that photograph. When she was small, she used to point at it and say, "Grandpa looks like he knows a secret." He did, I would tell her. The secret was that he knew exactly how lucky he was. That afternoon, she did not say a word about the picture. She just stood there, silent, while the appraiser's photograph glowed on my phone between us. The watch lay on a dark velvet square beneath a jeweler's lamp. Even in that photograph, I recognized every small mark on it. The narrow gold case. The brown leather band William replaced twice himself because he said the original straps never lasted long enough. The tiny scratch near the winding crown from the time he dropped it while repairing our back porch screen. And on the inside of the back cover, there it was. For William, every minute with you mattered. Love, Rebecca. My own handwriting. My own words. Ava, I said quietly, where is Grandpa's watch? She looked at the phone for a long moment. Then she lifted her chin. I told you. I gave it back. No, I said. You told me you left it on my kitchen table last Thursday. I did. I looked past her toward the kitchen. The table was exactly where it had always been, beneath the window that looked out over my hydrangeas. There was a basket of unopened mail in the center, a sugar bowl shaped like a pear, and the little ceramic dish where I kept my keys. No watch, no note, no sign that something which had belonged to my husband for more than 50 years had ever been returned. Ava, I said again, please don't make me ask a third time. Her mouth tightened. For 1 second, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on our sofa with her head in William's lap. I remembered her wearing mismatched socks, asking him why clocks had hands but no arms. I remembered him lifting her onto his knee and letting her listen to the faint tick inside the watch. Then that memory disappeared behind the face of the woman standing in front of me. I don't know what you want me to say, she said. The truth would be a good place to begin. She gave a short, humorless laugh. You always do this. Do what? Make everything into some big moral lesson. Her voice sharpened. I borrowed a watch. I had a terrible week. Maybe I misplaced it. That does not mean I stole from you. The word stole hung in the hallway. I had not used it. Not yet. I felt something in me want to rise up quickly, the way anger does when it has been waiting just below the skin. But William had taught me something over the years. When a person becomes defensive before you have accused them, it is usually because they have already accused themselves. So I took a breath. I did not say you stole it, I told her. I said an appraiser called me. He says someone brought my watch to his office and asked what it was worth. Ava looked away. And he took a photograph, I continued. He told me the person said the watch had belonged to her grandfather, her shoulders lowered, just a little. That was the moment I knew. Not everything, not the full story, but enough. I sat down slowly in the chair by the front door, the one William used to sit in while he tied his work boots. At 68, I had learned that sitting down can sometimes make a person feel steadier than standing tall. It gives you time to choose your next words. Ava, I said, did you take that watch to an appraiser? She stared at the rug. Yes, the answer was barely louder than a whisper. My throat tightened. Why? Her eyes filled with tears so quickly that for a moment I almost reached for her hand. Almost. I needed money, she said. For what? I just needed it. That is not an answer. She pressed her lips together and then the words came all at once. My rent was late. My car payment was late. I had a credit card bill. I thought I could get through the interview, get this job, and buy the watch back before you ever noticed. You thought you could buy it back. I was going to. From whom? I don't know. She wiped at her face. The man said it was just an appraisal. He said he might have a buyer. My heart began to beat harder. Did you sell it? No. Did you leave it with him? She hesitated. That hesitation was worse than any answer. Ava, I signed something, she said. But it was not a sale. It was just paperwork. He gave me money against it. How much? She looked up at me then, and there was shame in her face, but also something else. Fear. $2,000. I sat very still. William's watch was not important because of its gold. I had never had it insured for some grand amount. It was an old pocket watch converted to a wristwatch decades ago, beautiful in a quiet way, the sort of thing that only meant everything to the people who knew its story. But $2,000 told me something. Ava had not brought it in because she needed money for groceries. She had brought it in because she was desperate, or because someone had convinced her that a family heirloom was easier to sacrifice than the truth. Who was with you? I asked. No one. Who knew you had the watch? No one. I watched her carefully. She was crying now. But tears do not always make a person honest. Sometimes they only mean that the consequences have finally arrived. Ava, I said, your mother doesn't know? My mother has enough problems. Does your boyfriend know? Her eyes flickered. It was small, so small that another person might not have seen it. But I had spent 36 years helping children find books in the Willow Creek Library. I had watched little ones insist they had not taken the last cookie while chocolate melted on their sleeves. I had watched teenagers pretend they had not broken rules while staring at the exact corner of the room where they had hidden the evidence. Ava did not have to say his name. I knew it anyway. Jason, I said. She covered her face. And there it was. Not the whole truth, but another piece of it. Jason Reed had been in Ava's life for almost a year. He was charming when he wanted something and distant when he did not. He always remembered to bring flowers to birthdays. But he never seemed to have money when a check arrived at a restaurant. He spoke about big plans in the same careless way other people spoke about the weather. William would have disliked him immediately, not because Jason had tattoos or drove an old car or worked odd jobs. William had known plenty of good people who did all three. He would have disliked Jason because he looked at Ava as if she were a door he expected to open for him. What did Jason tell you? I asked. Ava lowered her hands. He didn't make me do anything. That was not my question. He said it was a temporary loan. Her voice cracked. He said old watches like that are just objects, Grandma. He said you wouldn't even wear it. He said we could get it back after he got paid for this construction job. And did he get paid? She shook her head. No, he said the contractor cheated him. Does Jason have the $2,000? I gave him some of it. How much? $1,500. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I held the edge of the chair until it passed. Ava had taken something that belonged to William and me, something she knew I treasured, and handed most of its value to a man who had not even cared enough to sit beside her while she told me. Still, she was my granddaughter, and love does not disappear just because trust has been wounded. It changes shape. It becomes more careful. It learns to stand with its hands open instead of reaching blindly. Did you tell the appraiser the watch belonged to you? I asked. No, Ava. I said it was from my grandfather. That is not the same answer. She looked down again. Yes, she whispered. I said it was mine. The truth landed softly, but it cut deeply. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The old clock over my mantel ticked through the silence. It had belonged to William's mother, and he used to complain that it ran 3 minutes fast. He never fixed it. He said it reminded him not to waste time. I looked at Ava and wondered how much time it would take before she understood what she had truly put at risk. Not just a watch. Not just $2,000. The place she had in my life. I need the name of the appraiser, I said. She shook her head quickly. Grandma, please, I can fix it. You have had 2 weeks to fix it. I was going to. You have been saying that since you walked through my door. Her face crumpled. I'll call Jason. You will not call Jason first. but he knows where the paperwork is. Then we will find it through the man who has my watch. She looked frightened. What if he already sold it? That is exactly why we are not waiting another day. I called the number the appraiser had left on my voicemail. His name was Mr. David Harlan, and his office was above a small antique shop on Main Street. 3 blocks from the courthouse. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Clark? He said. I'm glad you called back. My granddaughter is here with me, I said. She has confirmed she brought the watch to your office. There was a pause. I see. Is the watch still there? Yes, he said. It is secured in my valuation cabinet. I did not place it for sale. Relief moved through me so quickly it almost hurt. But, he continued, there is an issue with the paperwork. I felt Ava go still beside me. What issue? Your granddaughter signed an intake agreement stating she had authority to consign the item. The document also includes a short-term advance agreement through a separate buyer services company. Is that a pawn agreement? I cannot give you legal advice, Mrs. Clark. But she accepted an advance, and the agreement gives the company an option to purchase if the amount is not repaid by a stated date. What date? Mr. Harlan hesitated. Tomorrow. Ava began to cry again. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the quiet sound of someone realizing the edge of a cliff was closer than she had allowed herself to believe. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Tomorrow. That was why she had come to me with an empty excuse about leaving the watch on the table. She had not come to confess. She had come to see whether I would notice before the deadline ran out. Mr. Harlan, I said, will you please email me every document connected to that watch? I can send copies of the intake form, photographs, and the valuation record. The advance agreement belongs to the partner company, but their name and contact information are listed. Please send them. I will. After I ended the call, Ava sank down onto the bottom stair. I'm sorry, she said. I believed she was sorry, but I did not yet know what she was sorry for. Was she sorry that she had betrayed me? Or was she sorry that the watch had not disappeared quietly enough for her to avoid being caught? There is a difference, and when you are older, you learn not to confuse regret with accountability. I went to the kitchen and filled the kettle. My hands shook as I did it, though I tried to hide that from her. I had made tea in this house through arguments, illnesses, funerals, birthdays, and long winters when snow covered the driveway for days. Tea did not solve anything, but it gave me something ordinary to do while my mind caught up with my heart. Ava followed me into the kitchen. Grandma, she said softly, please don't tell Mom. I turned from the counter. Your mother is not the first person I am thinking about right now. I'll pay you back. With what? I'll get another job. You already had 1 interview. I can ask my manager for more shifts. And Jason? Her expression changed. I had not raised my voice once. I did not need to. What about him? She asked. Will he return the $1,500? He doesn't have it. Then where is it? She folded her arms over herself. He used it for a deposit. A deposit on what? She did not answer. I put the kettle down. Ava. He said we were going to move. Move where? To Columbus. The name sat between us like another stranger in my house. You were going to leave Willow Creek? He said there was more work there. He said I could get a better job, too. And you were going to fund that move with your grandfather's watch? He said it would only be for a few weeks. There it was again, he said. Not I decided. Not I chose, he said. I looked at my granddaughter and saw how easily fear can dress itself up as love when a young person is afraid of being left behind. William used to tell Ava that courage was not about feeling no fear. It was about refusing to let fear make your choices for you. She had forgotten that. Perhaps I had forgotten it too, in a different way. I had wanted so badly to believe that lending her the watch meant I was giving her comfort. I had not asked enough questions. I had not told her clearly that the watch was not hers to risk. I had trusted family to understand the difference between borrowing something and claiming it. That was my mistake. But it would not become my silence. The documents arrived in my email 20 minutes later. I printed them in my small home office, where William's old desk still stood beneath a shelf of library books I could never quite bring myself to donate. The printer hummed, page after page. The intake form had Ava's signature. The valuation record described the watch in careful detail. 18-karat gold case, Swiss movement, leather band, worn but original replacement. Interior engraving. Then I found the agreement from the buyer services company. Ava had borrowed $2,000. But the repayment amount was not $2,000. It was $2,750, due by 5 o'clock the following day. If it was not paid, the company could take title to the watch and sell it without further notice. At the bottom of the page, beneath Ava's name, was a second signature. Not Jason's. Mine. Or something someone wanted to look like mine. Rebecca Clark. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I read the line above it. Owner acknowledgement. I, Rebecca Clark, confirm that I authorize Ava Reed to secure an advance against the listed item. Ava stood behind me in the doorway. I didn't sign that part, she said. I turned around slowly. You told me you signed paperwork. I signed the first page. He said it was just to show I brought the watch in. I didn't sign your name. Then who did? She began shaking her head. I don't know. But this time, when I said Jason's name, she did not deny it, and I understood that getting William's watch back was no longer the only thing I had to do. Someone had used my name to place a debt against something I owned. Someone had taken a frightened young woman's mistake and turned it into a plan. And before the next day ended, I intended to find out exactly who. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. For a few seconds, I did not remember why my chest felt tight. Then I looked at the empty space on the dresser across from my bed. That was where William's watch had rested for years. Not locked away in a safe, not hidden behind a password. Just resting on the small blue cloth beside our wedding picture, where I could see it whenever I needed to remember that love had once filled every ordinary corner of this house. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the quiet. William had been gone for 4 years, but some mornings I still expected to hear him downstairs, humming badly while he made coffee. He used to wear that watch every Sunday, even after he retired. He said, a man should have 1 day a week when he dressed like time still mattered. The watch had come from his father, though I had paid to have it repaired when William turned 50. The engraver had asked what I wanted written inside. I remember standing at the jewelry counter, embarrassed because the words in my mind sounded too sentimental to say aloud. Finally, I wrote them on the back of a deposit slip. For William, every minute with you mattered. At the time, I thought I was giving him a gift. I never imagined I was also creating a piece of evidence that would one day help me prove someone had treated our life together like an item on a shelf. At 9 o'clock, I called Elaine Porter. Elaine had been our attorney for almost 20 years. She helped William and me update our wills after he got sick, and she was the person who made sure I understood every paper I signed after he passed away. She never rushed me. She never spoke to me as if grief had made me incapable of thinking. When I told her what had happened, she did not interrupt. She listened as I explained the appraisal, the advance agreement, Ava's signature, the deadline, and the forged owner acknowledgement. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Rebecca, do not pay anything yet. I had expected her to tell me to pay the money, retrieve the watch, and worry about the rest later. But the deadline is today, I said. I understand. First, we need to preserve the documents and make clear that you did not authorize the agreement. If you pay before we notify them, someone may later claim you accepted the contract. What if they sell William's watch? Mr. Harlan still has possession of it. Yes. Good. Then we start there. Her voice was calm, but firm. Can you meet me at his office in an hour? I can. And Rebecca? Yes, bring Ava if she is willing. She may have made a terrible choice, but she is also a witness to what happened. Right now, we need facts. I hung up and stared at the phone for a while. Facts. That was what I needed. Not excuses. Not tears. Not the version of events Ava wished had happened. Facts. Ava arrived at my house 20 minutes later. She had not slept much either. Her eyes were swollen, and she wore the same gray sweatshirt from the day before. I noticed she had left her handbag in the car. Perhaps she was afraid I would think she had brought another paper for me to sign. I called Jason, she said as soon as she stepped inside. I felt my stomach tighten. I asked you not to. I know, but I panicked. What did he say? She swallowed. He said I was overreacting. He said the watch was just collateral and that you would get it back if you stopped being dramatic. I looked at her. Did he say that about me? Yes. Did he say anything about the signature? Ava's mouth trembled. He said not to mention it. I stood still. Not to mention what? She looked toward the front window as if Jason might somehow be standing across the street. At the appraiser's office, he took the tablet from me after I signed the intake form. He said they needed proof that you knew I had the watch. I told him you did know. You gave it to me. That is not what the document says. I know. Her voice became smaller. He said he was only going to write a note. I didn't see what he did. Did you see him sign my name? No, not exactly. Did you see him holding the tablet? Yes. Did he know where I keep the watch? She nodded. He came over with me the day I asked to borrow it. He was waiting in the car. The room went cold around me. I remembered that afternoon now. Ava had come alone to the door, but when I looked through the window after she left, I had seen a dark sedan at the curb. I assumed Jason had picked her up. I did not think anything of it. I had even waved. The thought made me feel foolish, but Elaine had told me many times that trust is not foolishness. Trust becomes dangerous only when people use it as permission to take more than they were given. Get your coat, I told Ava. We're meeting my attorney. The office above Harlan Antiques smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. Mr. Harlan was a slender man in his 60s with silver hair and a careful way of speaking. He greeted me with concern, then looked at Ava without judgment. I appreciated that. Ava had done wrong. But humiliation was not the same thing as accountability. I did not want her crushed. I wanted her awake. Elaine was already there, seated at the small conference table near the window. She wore a navy suit and had a yellow legal pad open in front of her. Mrs. Clark, Mr. Harlan said, the watch is secure. He opened a locked drawer behind his desk and brought out a padded case. When he placed it on the table, my breath caught. The watch was there. It was not damaged. The leather strap was curled exactly the way William used to wear it. The gold case caught the morning light, and for one foolish second, I wanted to pick it up, press it against my chest, and walk out of the room. But Elaine put a gentle hand over mine. Not yet, she said quietly. Mr. Harlan handed us copies of the intake form, the valuation record, and the buyer services agreement. Elaine read every line, then she looked up at him. Did your office witness this owner acknowledgement? No, Mr. Harlan said. The agreement is processed through a third-party service. Their representative came in that afternoon. Who was the representative? A man named Grant Barlow. He works with Heritage Advanced Services. Did he ask to see identification for Rebecca Clark? Mr. Harlan's expression changed. He asked Ava whether she had authority to act for the owner. She said her grandmother had given her the watch. Ava looked down. I did say that, she whispered. Elaine nodded. That statement may have been incomplete, but it did not authorize a forged signature. She turned another page. Mr. Harlan, do you have security cameras in the valuation room? Yes. Do they record sound? No, video only. Can you preserve the recording from the afternoon Ava brought the watch in? I already did, he said. After I called Mrs. Clark, I thought it was wise. I looked at him with gratitude. You did? He gave a small nod. Something about the situation troubled me. The engraving was so personal, and when I asked Ava if the owner knew she was seeking an advance, she looked toward the man beside her before she answered. Ava's eyes filled again. I'm sorry, she said. Elaine opened her folder. Mr. Harlan, could we view that footage now? He led us into a small back office. On a monitor, he pulled up the date and time. There we were. Ava entered first, holding William's watch in both hands. Jason followed behind her in a dark jacket. He looked relaxed, even bored. He had one hand in his pocket and the other resting on Ava's shoulder. The video showed Ava speaking with Mr. Harlan. Then Grant Barlow arrived, carrying a thin laptop case. At first, nothing looked dramatic. Ava filled out the intake form. Mr. Harlan inspected the watch. Then Grant opened a tablet and turned it toward Ava. We watched her sign. After that, Jason leaned close. He spoke to her. She shook her head. He spoke again. Then, just as Ava had said, he took the tablet from her. He stood between Ava and the counter, his body blocking part of the view. But the camera angle showed enough. Jason typed something. He looked directly at the page. And then he wrote, slowly, carefully, Rebecca Clark, my name. I felt Ava make a sound beside me, almost like she had been struck. Elaine did not look away from the screen. Can you make a copy of that recording? She asked Mr. Harlan. Yes. And can you provide a written statement describing what you observed? Yes, Mr. Harlan paused. I need to be clear. I did not know the signature was forged. No one is accusing you of knowing, Elaine said. But your video may help establish exactly who signed it. Grant Barlow, the representative from Heritage Advanced Services, arrived 20 minutes later. He was younger than I expected, perhaps in his 40s, wearing a pressed white shirt and a watch that looked expensive enough to buy a dozen of Williams. He introduced himself politely, but his expression changed when Elaine placed the security stills in front of him. These images show Jason Reed signing a document in Rebecca Clark's name, she said. Grant studied them. I would need to review the full file. You will have it, Elaine said. For now, my client is formally disputing the agreement. She did not authorize the advance, did not sign the owner acknowledgement, and did not give Ava or Mr. Reed permission to pledge her property. Grant looked at Ava. Did you tell us the watch belonged to you? Ava swallowed. Yes. Why? Because Jason told me to. He leaned back in his chair. Ms. Reed, I need you to understand that this is serious. I know. No, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. I folded my hands in my lap. She is beginning to understand. There is a difference. Grant looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. Elaine continued. Heritage Advanced Services must place an immediate hold on the agreement and suspend any attempt to transfer the watch. Grant glanced at the papers again. I can initiate a compliance review. Given the disputed signature, the item will remain secured while that happens. And the repayment deadline? I asked. It will be frozen pending review. The breath I had been holding finally left me. Not relief, exactly. More like space. A small space where I could think again. As we left the office, Ava walked beside me without speaking. On the street, people passed us carrying coffee cups and shopping bags. A woman pushed a stroller past the antique shop window. A delivery truck stopped at the corner. The world had continued moving while mine had narrowed around a watch, a signature, and a granddaughter's fear. At the car, Ava reached for my hand. I let her take it. Grandma, she said, I didn't know he was going to sign your name. I believe you did not know at first. Her face fell. At first? You knew enough to keep quiet after it happened. She closed her eyes. Yes. You knew the watch did not belong to you. Yes. You knew you had no right to say it did. Yes. The word became a sob. I squeezed her hand once, then let it go. I love you, I told her, but loving you cannot mean pretending you did not make choices. I don't know how to fix this. You begin by telling the whole truth, not only the part that makes you look less guilty. For the first time that day, she looked directly at me. There's more, she said. I waited. Jason didn't just use the money for our apartment deposit. My heart sank. What else did he use it for? He owed someone. Who? I don't know his name. Someone he worked with before. Jason said he had borrowed money for tools, but then the job fell through. How much? I think $3,000. You think? He wouldn't tell me everything. He just kept saying if we paid part of it now, we could start over in Columbus. I looked at the street in front of us. The plan had been larger than I realized. The watch had not been a desperate, isolated mistake. It had been a way for Jason to cover a debt without putting his own name on anything. Ava had been the family connection. The watch had been the asset. My forged signature had been the shield. And Ava, whether she wanted to admit it or not, had been used as the person who made it possible. Did Jason ever say he would repay the loan? I asked. He said his friend would give him a few weeks. Did he give you any of the money? $500. I paid my rent and one credit card bill. At least now we know where the money went. She looked ashamed. I should have told you sooner. Yes, I said. You should have. We drove back to my house in silence. But the silence was different now. It was not made of denial. It was made of the truth waiting for the rest of itself. That afternoon, Elaine called to tell me she had sent a written dispute to Heritage Advanced Services and requested that the security video be preserved. She also advised me to make a report with the Willow Creek Police Department, not because I wanted Jason dragged away in handcuffs, but because a forged signature involving someone's property is not a private family misunderstanding. It becomes a record, and records matter. Officer Nina Morales came to my home just before 6. She was calm, respectful, and took notes while I explained everything from the day Ava borrowed the watch to the footage at the appraisal office. Ava sat across from me at the dining table. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea, though it had gone cold long ago. Officer Morales asked her the same questions Elaine had asked. Did Jason pressure her to bring the watch? Yes. Did he handle the electronic paperwork? Yes. Did he sign Rebecca Clark's name? Yes. Did she know the watch belonged to Rebecca? Yes. Every answer seemed to take something out of her, but it also gave something back. By the time Officer Morales closed her notebook, Ava's shoulders were no longer drawn up around her ears. She looked frightened, but lighter. Truth can be painful. It can also be the first thing that makes breathing possible again. Officer Morales stood. We will review the documents, the video, and the information from Heritage Advanced Services, she said. Mrs. Clark, if anyone contacts you about the watch or asks you to withdraw your complaint, let us know. Then she looked at Ava. And Ms. Reed? Do not delete any messages from Jason. Save everything. Ava nodded. After the officer left, Ava remained at the table. The house was dark except for the lamp above us. Outside, rain had begun tapping softly against the kitchen window. Can I stay here tonight? She asked. The question hurt more than I expected. Not because I did not want her to stay, because I wondered whether she was asking for safety from Jason, or because she had nowhere else to go. What happened at your apartment? I asked. She looked down. Jason was angry when I told him I was coming here. What did he say? He said I was ruining everything. Did he threaten you? He didn't hit me, if that's what you mean. That was not my question. She was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into the pocket of her sweatshirt and placed her phone on the table. I have messages, she said. I looked at the screen. There were dozens. Most were from Jason. At first, they were the kind of messages that can look harmless if you do not know what to look for. Don't make this harder. Your grandma has plenty. You said she wanted you to have it. Stop acting like a child. I need you to handle this. But farther down, there was one message sent the night before Ava borrowed the watch. Bring the gold one. Don't mention me. I'll take care of the paperwork. And beneath that, another one from the day after the appraisal. If she asks, tell her you returned it. By Friday, it won't be her problem anymore. My hands went cold around the phone. Ava watched my face. There's one more, she whispered. She scrolled to the very bottom. The message had arrived 40 minutes earlier. It was from Jason. Tell your grandma to drop this. If she wants the watch back so bad, she can buy it herself. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down gently on the table. The watch was still safe, for the moment. But Jason was no longer trying to hide what he had done. He was trying to make me afraid to protect what was mine, and that was the moment I stopped seeing him as a careless young man who had made a bad decision. I saw him for what he was. A man who believed an older woman would be easier to pressure than a frightened granddaughter. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Officer Morales asked Ava to forward the messages to an evidence email address before she went upstairs to sleep. I watched my granddaughter do it from across the kitchen table. Each message disappeared from her phone screen one by one, but I knew that was not the same as making the damage disappear. Evidence can preserve a truth. It cannot restore the moment before trust was broken. Still, I felt steadier once the messages had been sent. There was the text telling Ava to bring the gold watch. There was the message telling her not to mention Jason. And there was the final one, sent only minutes before Officer Morales came to my house. Tell your grandma to drop this. If she wants the watch back so bad, she can buy it herself. It was not an apology. It was not fear. It was contempt. That message showed me exactly what kind of man Jason was when he believed someone had less power than he did. The next morning, I did something I had not done since William died. I took his photograph down from the dresser and carried it into the kitchen, not because I wanted to hide it, because I wanted it near me. I set it on the table beside my coffee while I called Elaine Porter. Officer Morales has Ava's messages, I told her, and Jason knew about the paperwork. Elaine was quiet for a moment. Then you did the right thing by reporting it. I keep asking myself whether I should have handled this inside the family. Rebecca, she said gently, a family can help someone make amends. A family cannot erase a forged signature because it is uncomfortable to address. Her words settled into me. I had spent much of my life trying to keep peace. It was how I was raised. You did not raise your voice. You did not embarrass relatives. You did not bring outsiders into private matters unless there was no other choice. But sometimes silence does not preserve peace. Sometimes it only protects the person causing harm. By noon, Heritage Advanced Services had completed its initial review. Grant Barlow called Elaine first, then joined us on a conference call. "The disputed authorization is invalid," he said. "We have reviewed the video," Mr. Harlan's statement, "and the signature comparison. We are canceling the agreement." For a moment, I could not speak. Elaine asked the question I was too afraid to ask. "And the watch?" "Mr. Harlan can release it to Mrs. Clark today." "What about the money Ava received?" I asked. Grant paused. "The company will address any repayment issue through its investigation. At this point, we will not ask Mrs. Clark to pay. The funds were advanced based on false representations and a forged owner acknowledgement." I closed my eyes. William's watch was coming home, but I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. There are some things you should never have to fight to recover. There are some things that should never become evidence in a file, or a subject line in an attorney's email, or a photograph on a police officer's phone. Still, when Mr. Harlan placed the watch in my hand that afternoon, I held it as if I had been given back a piece of my own breath. The leather band was warm from the room. The gold case had a little dust on it from being handled by strangers, and I rubbed it gently with the corner of my handkerchief. Then I opened the back. "For William, every minute with you mattered." The words were still there. My handwriting had survived. So had the truth. Mr. Harlan stood quietly behind his desk while I looked at it. "I'm sorry this happened," he said. "It is not your fault," I told him. "I should have asked more questions. So should I." He shook his head. "Trusting your granddaughter was not wrong, Mrs. Clark." I looked at him. "No," I said, "but I will trust differently now." Ava was waiting in the car when I came downstairs. She saw the watch in my hand and began to cry. This time, I did not turn away. I got into the passenger seat and placed the watch in my purse before speaking. "It is home," I said. "I'm glad." "I am too." Then we sat in silence for a minute. Finally, Ava wiped her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me. That is good," I said, "because forgiveness is not something you demand from the person you hurt." She nodded. "I know. Do you? I'm trying to." That was the most honest thing she had said since this began. Trying was not enough by itself, but it was a beginning. Over the next several days, the situation became more complicated before it became clearer. Detective Morales contacted Jason and asked him to come in for an interview. He did not come. Instead, he sent Ava a stream of messages accusing her of betraying him. He said she had promised to stand by him. He said I had turned her against him. He said the police were only interested because I was an old woman playing victim. Ava saved every message. She did not answer. That was harder for her than people might think. When you have spent months being told that someone else's anger is your fault, silence can feel like cruelty. But I reminded her that she did not owe Jason another chance to pressure her. Not after he had used her fear, my trust, and William's memory to solve his own problems. One evening, while we were sorting through the documents Elaine had told us to keep, Ava looked at me and asked, "Do you think he ever loved me?" I set down the folder in my hands. Outside, the sun was going down behind the maple trees, turning the kitchen walls a soft orange. "I think he may have cared for you in the way some people care for what they can get from someone," I said. She looked hurt. "I know that is not what you wanted to hear." "No," she whispered. "But it sounds true. Love does not ask you to lie to the people who love you. It does not put your name on a risk and then step aside when you are scared." She nodded slowly. "Grandpa would have hated him." "Grandpa would have hated what Jason did," I said. "And then he would have told you that one bad decision does not have to become the rest of your life." Ava looked down at her hands. "I made more than one bad decision." "Yes, you did." She gave a small, sad laugh. "You really don't let people off easy, do you?" "No," I said. "Not anymore." A week later, Detective Morales came back to my home with an investigator from the county fraud unit. They did not make promises they could not keep. They did not say Jason would be punished immediately, or that one video and a handful of messages made every question disappear. Instead, they explained what would happen next. They had obtained records from Heritage Advanced Services. They had reviewed the security footage. They had Ava's statement and the copied messages, and they had found something else. Jason had used the same email address from the advance agreement to send a rental deposit receipt to Ava 2 days after he received the money. The receipt showed that he had paid a landlord in Columbus, not for an apartment Ava had toured, but for a short-term rental in his own name. He had not been planning a new beginning for both of them. He had been planning somewhere to go after using her. The investigator also told us that the so-called tool debt Jason mentioned did exist, but it was not a debt to a former coworker. It was a personal loan Jason had taken out months earlier. He had missed several payments. The watch was not just collateral. It was part of a pattern of trying to shift the consequences of his choices onto other people. Ava sat beside me on the sofa while we listened. Her face did not change much, but I could feel her shaking. After they left, she said, "He was never going to take me to Columbus, was he?" I looked at her. I do not know what he told himself he would do, but the records show he did not use that money for the future he promised you. She nodded. Then she took a long breath and said, "I want to give a full statement. You already have." "No," she said. "I mean all of it. The times he told me to ask you for money. The times he said you didn't need things anymore. The time he asked where you kept your bank papers." My heart went still. "When did he ask that?" "Months ago." "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "I told him you had a filing cabinet, but I never gave him a key or anything. I believed her, but I also understood how close danger can come before we recognize its shape." Jason had not only seen William's watch as something valuable, he had been studying the edges of my life for weaknesses. The thought frightened me. Then it made me angry. Not loud anger, not wild anger. The kind that settles into your bones and tells you it is time to make changes. The following Monday, Elaine came to my house with a lockbox, a list of practical steps, and a patient expression. We changed the passwords on my email, banking accounts, and utility accounts. I placed the original copies of my will, deed, insurance papers, and William's military records in a secure location outside the house. We updated the emergency contacts at my bank and removed any old permissions I no longer needed. None of it felt dramatic. That was what made it important. Protection is often quiet. It is a password no one else knows. A document stored where it belongs. A professional who speaks to you directly instead of speaking around you. A decision to ask one more question before you hand something over. Ava helped me with some of it. Not because I wanted to make her earn forgiveness through chores, but because I wanted her to understand what it means to protect a life someone else has worked hard to build. She labeled folders. She scanned records. She sat beside Elaine and listened when she explained the difference between having access to someone's property and having permission to use it. One afternoon, Ava picked up William's watch from the blue cloth on my dresser. She did not put it on. She only held it in her palm. "I should have asked you for help," she said. "Yes, I was embarrassed. I know. I thought if I told you how behind I was, you'd think I had ruined my life." I sat beside her on the bed. "Ava, being behind on a bill is not ruining your life. Being afraid is not ruining your life. Asking for help is not ruining your life." She looked at the watch. "But lying can." "Yes," I said. "It can." She put the watch back down with both hands. "Can I still come here?" The question was so small that it almost broke me. I thought about the day she had stood in my entryway and lied while my husband's watch was sitting in another man's drawer. I thought about the messages, the forged signature, and the pain of realizing she had looked at something precious to me and seen a way out of her own trouble. Then I thought about the young woman who had finally stopped protecting Jason's lies. "You can come here," I said, "but there will be boundaries. I understand. You will not borrow money or property from me without asking plainly and hearing the answer plainly. You will not bring Jason to my house. You will not receive mail for him here, and if you are in trouble, you will tell me the truth before the trouble becomes bigger." She nodded, tears running down her face. "I will. I hope you mean that." "I do." A month later, Detective Morales called to tell me that Jason had been located at the Columbus rental address. The investigation was still moving through the proper channels. The evidence had been forwarded to the prosecutor's office for review, and Jason had been formally notified that he was under investigation in connection with the forged agreement and the attempted transfer of my property. That was all she could tell me. It was enough. I did not need a dramatic courtroom scene to feel that something had changed. Jason had believed that he could use my age against me. He believed Ava would protect him. He believed a forged name on a screen would be harder to defend than a frightened granddaughter's silence. He was wrong. The evidence existed because Ava finally told the truth. And I had it because I stopped trying to make the situation less serious than it was. In the weeks that followed, Ava found a part-time job at a local bookstore. It was not glamorous. The hours were uneven, and her feet hurt at the end of the day. But she came home one evening with a small paper bag and set it on my kitchen table. Inside was an envelope containing $100. "I know it's not much," she said. "What is this?" "The first payment." "For what?" "For the money I took from you." I looked at the envelope. She had not taken $2,000 from me directly, but she had taken something that led to it. She had placed my property at risk. She had made me spend time, worry, and legal fees to protect what was already mine. Elaine had advised me not to create a casual repayment arrangement without documenting it properly, so I had already set aside the records. But this was not really about the amount. It was about Ava choosing responsibility without being forced. "You need money for yourself," I said. "I have enough for groceries. Ava, I want to pay it back." I looked at her for a long time. Then I took the envelope and placed it inside the folder marked restitution. "All right," I said. "We will keep a record." She nodded. And for the first time in many weeks, I saw something in her face that looked like pride. Not the careless pride that had kept her from asking for help. The quieter kind. The kind that comes from doing the difficult thing after you have finally understood why it matters. That Sunday, I wound William's watch and put it on my wrist. The band was a little loose because it had been made for his hand, not mine. But I wore it while I watered the hydrangeas and while I stood in the backyard where we had celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, and summers that seemed like they would never end. The watch still ticked. So did the old clock in the living room. So did my life. I could not undo what Ava had done. I could not make Jason's choices disappear. But I could decide what came next. I could protect my home, my papers, my savings, and the memories William and I had built together. I could love my granddaughter without giving her access she had not earned. And I could remember that dignity is not keeping quiet when someone crosses a line. Dignity is knowing the line exists, naming it clearly, and standing on the right side of it. If this story reminded you to protect an heirloom, your independence, or a piece of family history that cannot be replaced, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who may need the reminder. And tell me in the comments, what family item would you protect first, no matter who asked to borrow it?